This is a relay project.
Real Talk starts right now. Here's Ryan Jespersen.
Welcome to a special edition of Real Talk. Premier Danielle Smith joining us live in studio. She's playing hardball with Confederation again. Her government made it easier by way of Bill 54 to trigger a referendum in Alberta, and Ottawa has been warned that unless a list of demands from Alberta is met by new Prime Minister Mark Carney and his cabinet, that Canada could face an unprecedented national unity crisis. But what's the end game here? A stronger Alberta inside Canada, or a province edging closer to the exit ramp? We're about to find out on this special edition of the show, which is being made possible by Alberta's top online real estate school. You can find them at relo.ca. That's relo.ca, where better real estate training starts. If you're like the thousands of Albertans that are pursuing careers in real estate, there's a very good chance you're recognizing unlimited earning potential, working for yourself, and helping people buy or sell that dream property. It's a competitive industry, but a rewarding one. You're going to want to make sure you kickstart your career on the right foot, and that starts at relo.ca. They're the only real estate school in the province with an incomparable team of experts ready around the clock to not only consult with you, but to prepare you to start your career with the best foot forward. The best bang for buck, the best value is the Alberta Commercial and Residential Real Estate Bundles. When you're signing up for those, make sure you're using the promo code Ryan100. That's Ryan100 to save $100 off each of them when you get started today at relo.ca.
Bill 54, this is what we think of you. You're garbage like that. This is treaty land, and we stand on it today.
We as First Nations people are saying that if Alberta wants to separate and doesn't want to be part of Canada, then you're not allowed on our traditional territories anymore for exploration.
This is treaty country, and any talk of separation is really insanity.
Had a collection of comments made by First Nations leaders, chiefs across Treaties 6, 7, and 8 over the past few days as we welcome Alberta Premier Danielle Smith to studio. Interesting to watch you watch that. I think you know what's been kickstarted here in the province right now, but does seeing such plainly stated opposition land with you?
Well, we've had a citizen-initiated referendum legislation since my predecessor came in. The question was it at a level that the signature petition campaign would have been reasonable? We've been having that discussion for the last year, and before the level was set so high as to be unachievable. So if you're going to have citizen initiative, you can't have some kind of barrier to it, because then people see that you're not really interested in allowing people to have a say. So we had been in a discussion. We've been working on this bill for a year, and we implemented along with 100 other changes to the Elections Act. You know, if I suspect if Pierre Poilievre had won, what people would be talking about was that we were ending tabulators, that we're putting limitations in place to prevent the kind of nonsense that we saw in Pierre's writing about 200 candidates being able to sign up, that we're putting some more rules around third-party advertising. There's a lot in that bill. The issue around the signatures for recall and initiative are just one part of it.
But if Pierre Poilievre had won, then you wouldn't have thousands of angry prairie residents, and for the purposes of our conversation today, angry Albertans who are fed up to the point where they want to leave Canada. So the timing of Bill 54, dropping the requirements for folks that may not be familiar, from 600,000 signatures to 177,000, the deadline from 90 days to get them to 120 days, obviously looks a lot like the Premier's office or this government encouraging folks to do what they can to take matters into their own hands.
And the point I'm making to you is that the legislation has been in the works, and it was going to come about. In fact, it was not implemented during the election campaign because we did not want to have any distractions from that discussion, and we implemented it after the campaign because there's a whole pile of things we need to fix. I've got some by-elections coming up, as you may know. We do have as well a provincial election that we've got to prepare for in a couple of years' time. We've already made the changes to the municipal election, so we had to make these changes, and so there's never a perfect time to do it. If we'd done it at the beginning of the campaign, I would have been criticized. If we'd done it in the middle of the campaign, I would have been criticized. We're doing it after the campaign, I'm getting criticized. The point is, we have a lot of changes that we need to make to elections law to ensure that we're correcting some of the issues that had been raised from the previous elections, and that's what we're doing.
Now, Nenshi was on the show just the other day after the NDP convention over the weekend. He accused you of playing games with not just the Edmonton Strathcona by-election, but with the others they're waiting for as well. When will that be happening?
Very soon. We're not playing games. We're waiting to see. I want to make sure I can have all my by-elections at once. And so it was, first of all, it was them playing games. I waited for a long time to see if anyone was going to step aside to give him a seat. We waited till the last possible minute to call the Lethbridge West by-election. And then as soon as the election was over, all of a sudden, Rachel Notley decided to retire. She could have done that earlier, and we could have had them all at once. And then, of course, we got into the new year, and I knew that a federal election was coming. It's normally convention. You don't try to have competing elections at the same time. And Rod Loyola also retired, but I've also now recruited Nathan Cooper to be my representative in Washington. So we're going to have all three of those at once, and we have to have the election called before June 30th, and we will.
I saw that interesting bipartisan support for Mr. Cooper's appointment after
He's
serving
very
as
well
Speaker.
liked. He's very well liked. I was actually pleased to see that Shannon Phillips put an endorsement in there for him. It just shows you how perfect a choice he is, because going down to the U.S., it's going to be very complicated relationship building, and it's going to require both sides of the aisle. He's going to have to develop and cultivate deeper friendships with both Republicans and Democrats at all levels, and he's already well underway with that work. He's been elected for some time, but in his role as Speaker, he's had an opportunity to do a lot of that engagement, so he was a perfect choice for that, and I'm glad that the opposition sees that as well.
You say at a provincial election in the next couple of years, a lot of people believe that you're planning on triggering an early election. It could be as early as next year. Is that something that you will entirely rule out, or is that still on the table?
Well, I'm not sure why that keeps coming up. I know it has been the case that other premiers have called early elections, but I have 2.5 years left in my mandate. I'm up against a federal government that's a minority. Minorities don't often last that long. So it could well be that the federal government has another election before I do. I feel I've got a strong enough mandate to advocate on behalf of Alberta interests for the things that I know that they care about. And so that's what I'm going to do. I mean, my marching orders is to give, I've heard it from caucus, I've heard it from the emails and calls and texts that I get, is give it a chance. Not forever, but give it a chance to see if we can strike a new deal with this new prime minister. So that's what I'll be working on, but I don't see any reason to disrupt any of that by going to an election. I think I've got a mandate to do those negotiations now.
So you're saying you will not call an election in 2026?
I have no intention to do that. As I said, I've got a lot of work that I need to do right now in trying to put our issues on the table with this new prime minister.
I talked to Grand Chief Greg Desjardins the other day, Confederacy of Treaty 6 First Nations, and he called this whole referendum talk reckless. And then we heard from Chief Clifford Poussette from Good Stony First Nation, and he says he requested a meeting with you. He wants to talk about what he says are government efforts to loosen referendum rules and entertain conversations that embolden Alberta's separatist movement, and he says he'll push for a referendum to remove you from office if you don't meet with him. Will you meet with First Nations leaders, and what will be your message to them?
Yeah, happy to meet with First Nations leaders. We were supposed to meet this week. We do have regular protocol meetings. I've met with I continue since I got elected to meet with First Nations leaders, because quite frankly, our provincial government has done more to advance reconciliation than any other provincial government in the history of the country. We have our Alberta Indigenous Opportunities Corporation that every other province and even the federal government is replicating to give support for nations when they want to buy equity stakes in businesses. We're up to $700 million worth of loan guarantees that will generate a $1.2 billion worth of revenue. We have supported them through the Alberta Aboriginal Business Investment Fund, creating more than 1,000 jobs with individual grants for individual businesses. We're building recovery communities on 4 nations, including one near Métis Crossing for Métis, so that we can use Indigenous healing practices to help address the issue of addiction. We're working with Enoch to try to get health facilities built. There's no other province that respects the the national rights, the inherent rights of First Nations people as we do, but looks at them as a partner in being able to address their issues. So I will happily continue to meet with nations, absolutely.
So you said in your TV address on Monday that respect for the treaties and First Nation sovereignty is non-negotiable. What does that mean to you in practice in the context of a referendum or talk about Alberta's sovereignty or separation?
Well, I guess the Clarity Act identified that. The Clarity Act said that it was legitimate for a province to have that kind of vote, and then that would trigger negotiations. So the Clarity Act has been the rule of the land for a long time. I guess it's part of the reason the Bloc Québécois continues to elect MPs. It's part of the reason the Parti Québécois is leading in the polls in Quebec. So I guess this is just it. The same rules that apply to Quebec apply to every other province. It's been determined by the Supreme Court, and it requires legal scholars to answer that question. I don't have the answer to that.
What did you make of Yves-François Blachette's Bloc Québécois leader's comments on a referendum in Alberta, suggesting that you need to identify as a nation, you need a culture, and oil and gas is not culture?
We have a culture in Alberta. We've got a culture of entrepreneurship. We've got a culture that embraces multiculturalism, that has been built from people from all over the world. I think 163 different linguistic groups are represented here and find a way to forge an identity that's both in keeping with their heritage as well as embracing Alberta. We've got an incredible relationship and history with Indigenous partners. We have a very different culture than Quebec, because Quebec denies all those things, right? They are only about language, and I don't think that they accept the broad diversity that we do in Alberta, which I know has created such an incredible place for people around the world to keep on coming to. This is the place you achieve your dreams. This is the place aspirationally where you can build a business, start a family, buy a home. Those are things that you can't necessarily do in every part of the country, and so he's just wrong.
Mm-hmm. There's a couple of parallel storylines that are kind of interesting to watch. On one hand, reports from you and from the Prime Minister that there was actually a productive and what sounds like relatively amicable phone call. I'll let you describe it between the two of you. I understand that to be kind of your first official phone call. At the same time, you issue on Monday a list of demands to Ottawa, and you say if these are not heeded, if there's not action on this, including access to 3 coastlines and the like, then Canada, the federal government, could face an unprecedented unity crisis. They seem incongruous, the two at the same time.
I try to tell the Prime Minister the same thing in private as I do in public. I met with him prior to the election, just when he first got elected, and I told him these are the 9 things that we would like to have. After our meeting, I posted them online. I repeated them often during the campaign, and I reiterated that after the campaign. Things don't change just because there's a change in the face of the person at the top. What we need to see is that they're going to address the issues. They're going to address the reasons why we feel under economic attack, and so that we can attract investment again. So I did have a great meeting with him on the phone. We've had several meetings of the first ministers, and he's a listening Prime Minister. And that's what my experience has been. But we don't want someone to just listen and talk. We want them to act. And so he has a frame here to be able to identify projects, move some things forward, and demonstrate he's going to do things differently. So that's what we're pressing for. That's what he got elected on, quite frankly. Like, he got elected by stealing the platform of Pierre Poilievre, who'd been advocating for these things for a number of years. First thing he did was cancel the carbon tax, which showed that he realized they'd gone too far on their environmental policy. It was hurting people. And so we're just saying that's not the only policy you went too far on. You went too far on a tanker ban. You went too far on putting too much red tape around an approval process. You went too far with an emissions cap, net zero power regs, net zero cars, banning the ability of businesses to be able to celebrate their successes in reducing emissions. And so let's address all those things. Let's get some things built. And then I think that's going to be good for Canada and good for Alberta.
When you threaten a national unity crisis, your words, at a time when the nation is uniting to face this what feels like an existential threat out of the Trump White House, is this the biggest political risk that you've ever taken?
I guess the way I've tried to describe it to our friends out east is as hurt and betrayed as they feel at Donald Trump's attack on Canada. That's how hurt and betrayed Albertans feel by Ottawa's attack on Alberta. It's that's what the emotion is that we're grappling with here. The existential threat to Alberta's energy industry comes from Ottawa. The existential threat comes from 10 bad years of policy that were put in place by Justin Trudeau and his buddy Stephen Guilbeault. And no matter how much we negotiated, they just kept on going down a pathway which would have kept our oil and gas in the ground. And that is not on for Albertans. So that's part of what I'm hoping people understand is, yeah, for sure, we have to make sure that we get a better deal with the United States. But it doesn't preclude Ottawa from fixing the problems that they have in order to be able to address our needs as well.
You have been very clear on Monday night in front of a live television and streaming audience. You said that your Canada includes Alberta. You told people that you do not believe in this idea of Alberta sovereignty or Alberta separation, at least. But the language is loaded, and obviously it's picking up momentum. There's no doubt about that. Are you concerned that you may be fanning the flames on something that could start burning out of control?
Acknowledging something exists is not the same as fanning. I didn't create the sentiment that is out there. Justin Trudeau created that sentiment. That sentiment has always been somewhere around. I'm just letting you know. It's always been around 20%. It rose to 30% in the Angus Reid poll. Post-election, it's closer to 40%. And so acknowledging that something exists is not the same as fanning it. My job is to make sure it doesn't get higher. My job is to make sure it gets lower. And that's the reason why I have said that I support Alberta sovereignty within a united Canada. That has always been my position. That is the position of our party from its founding principles, is the position of our caucus right now. And it's up to me to do what I can to try to get a new arrangement with Ottawa and to see if we can get a different pathway with this new Prime Minister. When you change leadership, you can change direction. The reason why people are skeptical is because of the recent history of the Prime Minister, his book Values, talking about phasing out oil and gas, the work he did with net zero banking and trying to debank and defund and deinsure our industry. So you can understand why there's some suspicion that it's not genuine, and that's why we need to see action rather than talk. I know that he's got two different careers. He's got a career of being a banker for Canada and the UK under conservative governments. And that is sort of one part of his resume. But then he also has a history of leading up the Net Zero Alliance out of Glasgow and working to try to defund all of the things that we want to invest in. So I've said, which Mark Carney do we have? And I hope it's the pragmatic banker. That's what I'm looking forward to. And we'll see as we continue our conversations if that's the case.
On our May 5th episode, it was marked 10 years since that 2015 election that kind of changed politics in Alberta. In a significant way for the first time in more than 40 years. Rachel Notley was on the show remembering it, and she accused you of stoking anger for your own political bottom line. You talk a lot about fighting for Albertans and fighting for Alberta. What's your message to the hundreds of thousands or millions of Albertans that don't feel like all of this is a priority, that don't feel like you're representing their best interest, that might actually be concerned or even scared about the future of Alberta?
Well, I'm scared about the future of Alberta if we continue on the same pathway that we have before. I'm concerned about having to have conversations with CNRL and Cenovus about when they're going to be shutting down their oil sands operations because we're no longer allowed to produce. I'm worried about what would happen if we have to reduce our production by 2 million barrels a day by 2030, when that does to our revenue, what that does to our ability to pay for teachers and nurses and schools and doctors. That is what this is connected to. Alberta gets $17 billion a year in resource revenue. It is the reason we have such low taxes, is because the energy industry subsidizes our public service and allows us to give the best public service in the country. And so these are connected. They're not disconnected things. But that is the pathway. If we're not allowed to bring new power on the grid, then I have to create a commission that will triage the number of projects coming in and choose yes and no of which industrial projects are coming in, like they're talking about doing in Quebec. That is not a future that I want. And so I think that people should be very concerned that if we don't get some of these rules changed, that is the pathway that we are on. That is the reason why people are taking it so seriously. And I hope that they would join with me in lobbying Mark Carney to take our concerns seriously, find an accommodation so that we can build economic corridors, so we can get more of our product to the Asian market, so we can diversify our trading partners, so that we can trade more with each other and support each other. That should be the pathway that all of us are on. That's the one I'm on.
In closing, you have a caucus meeting to get to. If it went this far, are you prepared, legacy-wise, to be the premier that ushers Alberta out of Canadian Confederation?
Sure don't want to be. That's why I have said that I believe my job is to get a better deal with Canada and a new deal with Canada. And that's what I'll be focusing on. I'm going to enter into those discussions in a spirit of hope and goodwill, as I did when Justin Trudeau was Prime Minister. Sadly, those hopes were dashed after 2.5 years. But it's a fresh start, and I'm looking forward to seeing if we can make some progress.
Premier, thanks for doing the interview. I appreciate it.
You bet. Thanks, Ryan.
That's Alberta Premier Danielle Smith right here on Real Talk. You can let us know what you think in our live chat powered by Park Power. If you're watching or streaming this live, you can always send us an email to talk@ryanjespersen.com as well. This conversation made possible with the support of Real Talk partners like the team at North Road Investment Council. You know, obviously on this show, we don't shy away from big questions. You just saw about 10 of them in a row. And when it comes to your retirement, the questions can feel endless. Do I actually have enough to retire, or am I fooling myself? Should I take my CPP early, or should I wait? I'm not trolling with you, CPP question, by the way. If these are questions that are keeping you up at night, or if you don't even know which questions to ask, then it's time to talk to the team at North Road Investment Council. They've got certified financial planners, chartered financial analysts that can answer your biggest retirement and financial planning questions, independent fiduciaries who you pay per hour fee, not through commissions or by selling investment products. No fluff, no pressure, just clear advice and strategies that make sense. You can learn more by visiting northroadic.com. Hey, a heads up, everybody. Mother's Day is coming up this weekend, and our friends at Friesen Brothers have you covered at all of their fresh market stores. That's right, the return of the Mother's Day brunch. This is always such a very popular one, especially for those of you that may have your mom and then maybe the mom of your kids, or however it works out. There's a good chance that you're going to be looking to celebrate. You're going to be looking to make people feel special, but you may not want to be in the kitchen the entire time, making those waffles, getting the sausages ready. Why not leave it to the team of Red Seal chefs at Friesen Brothers? Savor the moment with mom over an exquisite brunch coming up this weekend, May 10th and 11th from 9 to 4. Just $22 for adults, all in. $15 for seniors, $10 for kids under 12 in Edmonton, Glenora, Rabbit Hill, Stony Plain, Hinton Hill, Peace River, Fort Saskatchewan, and Drumheller. Shout out to you, Drumheller. You can check out more at friesen.com. California Closets has you covered when it comes to custom closets and storage solutions for the entire home. Best thing about working with California Closets of Canada, they are locally owned, they are locally operated, and they're manufacturing all of their installations right here in the province of Alberta. They can work with any budget, they can work with any vision, and their work is guaranteed for life. You can check out more. See some examples of their work. Entertainment centers, Murphy beds and spare bedrooms / home offices, mudrooms, boot rooms, laundry rooms, garages, you name it. California Closets does it better than anybody else. You can request that consultation. It's free today at californiaclosets.ca. And a lot of talk about oil and gas on this episode, obviously. If you're working in Alberta or Canada's energy industry, you want a chance to rub shoulders and connect with the biggest players in the province, you're not going to want to miss the Nisku Energy Show. That goes May 14th and 15th at the beautiful Silent Ice Sports and Entertainment Center in Nisku, Alberta, just south of Edmonton. A 2-day event bringing together leaders from all parts of the energy sector. It's a hub for local innovation and collaboration. There's going to be a job fair there. You're going to have a chance to ask questions to some of the innovators that are really, really shaping Alberta's future. That's what it comes down to. It's the Nisku Energy Show, the 14th and 15th of May. Get your tickets today at yourchamber.ca. Alberta Premier Danielle Smith joining us in studio. Want to leave a chance to get into the live chat on this, and as well as to read some comments. You know, we ask you, Real Talkers, to send us your emails, to send us your thoughts to talk@ryanjespersen.com, and you've been doing that en masse this week. It's obviously a pretty remarkable circumstance right now. What's happening in the province of Alberta? There's a lot of eyes on this province. This Bill 54 legislation making it easier to trigger a referendum, and of course, all of this boiling down to the relationship between Alberta and Ottawa, the relationship between Alberta and the rest of Canada. And we received some comments here. And I mean, these are layperson's terms, right? Premier Klein used to call them Martha and Henry. This is MJ who wrote into the show and said, first off, I think it's valuable for the audience to know that I have voted for some conservative parties in past, and I listened closely to Premier Smith's announcement earlier this week on Monday, that live televised announcement. Was amazed, says MJ, at her ability to make a batshit crazy idea seem reasonable. Alberta is selling significantly more oil and gas than we were a decade ago, and although the Premier says she didn't pick the fight with Ottawa, you remember that we brought you that comment on Tuesday morning. Her exact words, we didn't pick this fight, but we'll finish it. MJ says it's quite obvious that she has. I'm tired of politicians like Smith sowing division with lies or half-truths for their own political game. MJ says many Canadians came to Alberta for a better life, myself included. How will separating from Canada make life better for those born in this province or those who have adopted Alberta as our home? Maybe this government would be better served by investigating the increase in insurance and electricity prices. By the way, MJ, we're talking insurance tomorrow. That'll be our Real Talk Roundtable May the 9th, in particular auto insurance. Don't miss that. MJ says we're addressing the shortcomings in healthcare and our education system. Says I won't sign a petition to leave Canada, but I sure would sign one to send this government packing. That from MJ. And we got another interesting one from Mr. Dad. If we would have had more time, Johnny, if we would have had a half hour instead of 20 minutes on that interview, I like this one from Mr. Dad, which is a question that begs to be asked, and not just of political representatives, but industry spokespeople as well, in particular in oil and gas. Mr. Dad wonders, is the Premier or this government aware of any private investors who are both interested in and capable of building, owning, and operating oil pipelines to all three coastlines? He says, I'd also be interested to know if the Premier would respect the outcome of a referendum on coal mining in the Rockies. Mr. Dad makes an interesting point. Loosening the regulations or the requirements, let's call them, on triggering a referendum in the province of Alberta can work in a number of ways. This is not legislation, Bill 54, that was introduced just to make it easier to trigger a referendum on leaving Canada or a referendum on negotiating Alberta's place in Canada. The wording of this question, very significant. But this opens up the door for any Albertan to venture out with a citizen-led democratic action of trying to collect 177,000 signatures over the course of 4 months, and if so, compelling the government to hold that referendum. You wonder what others might do with it. Others who see what's happening right now in the context of Alberta separation or Alberta sovereignty and say, well, you know what, this could go in a number of different directions. I'd be curious to hop into live chat here. Let's see where it's been going. I'm going to be honest with you. I was paying more attention to what Premier was saying than no offense, Real Talkers, but I do want to get into this and see what you have to say. This powered by Park Power. Cherie, meantime, Cherie just says, my blood pressure is through the roof on this one. Lori says, Albertans really don't give a shit about these silly separation ambitions. Says we care about our health, education, infrastructure, smart investments, all of which are being decimated right now under this government. Says Lori rather has a question around which donors are going to be starting recovery centers, a reference to the Alberta model of recovery or addressing the opioid crisis. The state of Alberta says a big step in this direction would be Alberta Provincial Police getting the RCMP out of Alberta. Kind of an interesting thought. You realize that there's a lot of things happening concurrently here that could be perceived as setting the table for a more meaningful conversation about leaving. I did want to play that clip. This was just a short time ago. I believe this was less than 24 hours ago from the leader of the Bloc Québécois. And he was asked about Alberta's ambitions. And it's kind of like a candid answer. François Blanchet, kind of smirking, basically alludes to the fact that his party has not been successful in leading Canada or leading Quebec out of Canada. So maybe he shouldn't be doling out any advice. But regardless, he was asked for some. And so here's what he offered up to Alberta.
A long time you've been talking about trying to separate from Canada. Now we're seeing that out in Alberta. For the people in Alberta who want to separate, do you have any tips for them on how to actually get the job done?
Our success so far does not place me in a position to give them tips about what to do, but I could give them tips about what not to do. Not now. The first idea is to define oneself as a nation. Therefore, it requires a culture of their own. And I am not certain that oil and gas qualify to define a culture. But it's theirs to decide if they want to reivindicate the right to self-determination. Would never interfere in that. It belongs to them. I would like us to be the first to do so, however.
He would like them to be the first.
Yeah.
Not the last, he didn't say.
You know what? Ever since the debates, I don't know why I like this guy now. Right? I feel like he says what's on his mind. He shoots from the hip. He's a little bit not like Trump, but like he just whatever comes in his brain, he says. Maybe it's like the English to French. I don't know what goes on in someone's brain who's like French first language, but maybe that's why it just comes out a little blunt, a little rough around the edges, but. I do tend to agree with him, and this is nothing against Alberta. I've grown up in Ontario. I've been in BC. I've been here. I recognize different cultures, but we were talking about this yesterday. You've been to Montreal. You've been to Quebec. There is a distinct French-Canadian culture there that is evident as soon as you get off the plane, as soon as you go into the cities, especially the smaller areas and stuff, the little boroughs, the little cul-de-sacs. It's very, very distinct culture. Now, does Alberta have that? Yeah, you could say they have a Western kind of, rural culture, and I get that. It's prevalent, but it's also prevalent kind of in Saskatchewan and Manitoba as well. It's not really super distinct to this province alone. Even on the east side of BC, there's some of that culture leaking over as well. So I understand what he's saying when he says, I think it was a bit of a cheap shot to say our culture is oil and gas. It's not just that. But we do have a Western kind of culture, and I get that, but I feel like it's not as distinct as Quebec.
Yeah, I mean,
sure.
Of course he's taking a little shot at Alberta.
He loves
for sure.
to.
But Alberta
shoot at oil
and
gas,
Quebec,
yeah.
Alberta and Quebec love taking shots at each other.
Of course, yeah.
And until we want to pick their brains on the best way to leverage everything you can to get a better deal within Confederation. Listen, this is never going to be a conversation about Alberta not trying to get the best deal that it possibly can for its citizens. Alberta not trying to maximize the value of its natural resources. Alberta not trying to, as best it can, fulsomely fund education and healthcare and other social services. We hear a lot about Alberta's prosperity and Alberta's wealth. A friendly reminder that Alberta spends less per capita on students than any other province or territory in Canada, which I think is relevant to this conversation as well. Obviously, Real Talkers coming at this issue and processing this interview, of course, from different perspectives. Redneck Philosopher in the chat says, rural Alberta is pissed. So maybe talk to others, other than the NDP, the Liberals, the NGOs, and the side Edmonton, you hacks. That from Redneck Philosopher. I mean, we just did have the Premier on. So, and I would also respectfully submit that Albertans are pissed. Nahad Nenshi said this on the show the other day. He says they're pissed at Danielle Smith. Is everybody pissed? If you're pissed at Ottawa and you're with the UCP, if you're pissed at the UCP or you're with Ottawa or you're with the rest of Canada, is the one common factor that everybody's pissed? Is that the type of reality that we want in our province? Is that the type of tone that we want to set? How about this? Piikani First Nation Chief. Johnny, can you tee this one up for me? This was Troy Knowlton. Didn't mince words on Bill 54. He's joined. I mean, this consortium of chiefs has been remarkable to see. And I recognize that not every single First Nation is represented in these comments, but when you're collectively seeing a number of different chiefs granting these interviews, coming together collectively, threatening legal action like Grand Chief Greg Desjardins did on the show the other day, Confederacy of Treaty 6 First Nations, you better take note. And here's what Piikani First Nation Chief Troy Knowlton had to say directly to the Premier.
Statements and actions the province has been taken is being met head to head by the chiefs of Alberta. We've come together to issue a statement and to strategize on how we're going to get the message out to the Premier and to all of Alberta that this is treaty country. And any talk of separation is really insanity, because there is no pathway to separation. You can have all the referendums you want, but there is no way. And for the province to not engage with First Nations, if they're going to make statements like that, really shows the respect that they have for the original inhabitants of this land. So I joined together with my brothers and sisters, the chiefs, Treaty 6, 7, and 8, as well as support from First Nations across Canada who know what we're going through. They know that the battles that we're embarking on. And what has happened today is separation. The rhetoric and insanity of separation here in Alberta has united First Nations on this land, but all across Canada from coast to coast to coast. So I want to thank you, Danielle Smith, 454. Why? Because today we stand united. We're not going anywhere. And if you feel that you have problems with First Nations, you could leave.
So there you go. Jillian wrote into the show, Jillian with a J, to talk at ryanjespersen.com. She says, I just wanted to write in with my own thoughts on events regarding this ongoing ballot for referendum to separate narrative. She says, especially as it affects Indigenous peoples of this land who through this continued talk are being completely disrespected by the Premier, her government, and the base of citizens in Alberta who are pushing this separatist ideology. Jillian says, it's my belief that Premier Smith's continued rhetoric around Alberta's potential referendum for separation from Canada is not only politically reckless, it's profoundly disrespectful to the legal and sovereign rights of Indigenous nations across the province. And the leaders of Treaties 6, 7, and 8 have been unequivocal. They do not consent to discussions that Alberta will host or would host on succession, and formally have requested that the Premier cease and desist in promoting this divisive narrative of Albertans getting to decide if Alberta separates from Canada. She goes on to say, equally troubling is what this rhetoric reveals, that the Premier is knowingly appealing to a segment of the population that would be largely unaware of or most likely misinformed about what separation would truly mean and require. Her statements capitalize on political frustration while sidestepping the hard legal, ethical, and diplomatic realities that this kind of act would result in. The Premier appears to advance a narrative that only stops short of explicitly calling for separation outright, yet unmistakably signals support for that possibility through suggestive language and repeated emphasis on provincial autonomy. This isn't leadership. It's not ethical. It's political opportunism at the expense of truth, reality, reconciliation, and legal clarity. That from Jillian with a J to talk at ryanjespersen.com. Super Chat Ken says this industry does not subsidize Alberta. The Premier doesn't seem to understand that Albertans own the resources and royalties, and that is the privilege that allows companies to enrich themselves. Meantime, Whiterium says not a single one of those questions was a big question. 80s Fanify says that wasn't even an interview. It was just platforming prepped answers. We do recognize that if I stop short of invoking profanity, screaming, yelling, banging the table, calling people idiots and morons, that some will never be satisfied. I respect your passion. I do want to clarify, at no point in Real Talk's history have we ever provided questions ahead of time for a guest. Maybe with the exception of like junior high science fair champions, Johnny, when we've had them on and we want to make sure that they know where we're going to go with it. We didn't give questions to the Prime Minister. We do not give questions to Premier Danielle Smith, to CEOs, or to any other guests. There's not a chance. It's not how we do it. It's not how we roll. We're seeing a lot of comments from those of you that are digging into what separation would actually look like. What would it actually mean for those treaty relationships? What would it actually mean? The reference earlier in the chat about policing, about pensions, about currencies, about military, about export and import access, a landlocked province, a landlocked sovereign state. What would that look like? And I encourage you to read up on this and to try to better understand yourself, to seek to understand. It was my honor last night to host the Chancellor's Forum on Misinformation and Navigating Truth in a Digital Age. That was presented, of course, at the University of Alberta from their Chancellor's office, in a really fascinating discussion in front of not just a packed house. I want to thank the many Real Talkers that showed up to that event after we let you know it was happening, but to the hundreds that joined via live stream as well. We had a chance to sit down with Professor Timothy Caulfield, with Dr. Shazma Mithani, with Shawnee Gwynn, who's doing an amazing job. She's developing an Indigenous-focused AI resource that can detect and respond to racial or ethnically motivated misinformation. Fascinating stuff. And Dr. Fio Snegovsky there as well, a University of Alberta political scientist. And as you can imagine, John, we took many, many questions from the audience there. We had people submitting questions, and the large portion of them, or a large number of them anyway, had a lot to do with this separation talk. People wondering, is this actually possible? Do people actually realize or recognize what this would mean for the province of Alberta? You know, we get these comments, these emails from people that say, what is the message to those of us that either were born in Alberta and want nothing to do with this? We're proud Canadians. We're proud Albertans, but we're proud Canadians, or the people that moved here for a better life, that don't see that manifesting itself or playing out in that way. I mean, even Jen Gerson. I don't think that Jen, with The Line, if you read The Line, she does a marvelous job with that. She's been a national political commentator for many, many years, and I don't think that she would object to being described as a conservative columnist. She wrote, if you subscribe to her work just today, about how this talk about Alberta's separation is influencing conversations around her family's dinner table about their investment in their kitchen.
Oh.
They've got the same thing happening in their kitchen that we have happening in ours. And that is that as a kitchen ages, a lot of times on the cabinets, it starts to bubble up. I don't know if it's like MDF or whatever it is, the wood that they have behind the veneer, and it starts to bubble up. And then you know, as Jen writes, that your days are numbered, that you have a cabinet refresh coming. And cabinets are a little bit more expensive than everybody realizes. We have that happening in our kitchen as well. We're trying to decide if we're going to make that investment. Jen's deciding the same thing.
Okay.
Says her family's budget doesn't accommodate a big kitchen renovation right now. She writes, but here's what we're talking about as we take a look at our kitchen cabinets. If Alberta goes forward with an independence referendum, as our premier is now suggesting could happen in 2026, and on the small chance that this vote is successful, we have no desire to live in a landlocked hermit kingdom of 5 million people separated from our family by a border and potentially unable to live or work anywhere else on the continent. She says this is not a better future for ourselves or for our kids, and we have even less interest in becoming American. So that from Jen. People are having very real conversations about what, not just talk about Alberta's separation, but if it actually were to manifest itself, what it would mean for things like their real estate investments, what it would mean for travel across the country, what it would mean for, like others have said, folks' ability to live and work across the country. It's all relevant stuff. And these are the things that people are thinking about as this moves from political theory and typical discontented or disgruntled prairie perspectives to reality. You know as well as I do that organizers will work to get 177,000 signatures on a petition to trigger a referendum. They'll do it in the 4 months that it takes or less to make it happen. And then the horse will be out of the barn. What happens from there? Now, obviously what happens is a referendum is an opportunity for Albertans to have their say, to have their voice. What results will that referendum return? And ultimately, what will the implications be? You can let us know where your head's at. We seek to understand your perspective. We legitimately want to know where you're coming at with this. I know that some of you feel like this is nothing more than a distraction, that this is irresponsible, that we should be talking about some of the very real issues that persist. What about Zachary Weeks on this show just a short time ago, earlier this week, living with a disability and advocating bravely, as he has done for decades, for his fellow Albertans with disabilities, challenging this government, which is clawing back the $200 Canada disability benefit from the approximately $1,900 or less that individuals with disabilities receive from AISH. Where's action on that? We're going to be hearing more about auto insurance, some interesting polling from Nanos on how Albertans feel about so-called deregulation or no-fault auto insurance. I'll give you a bit of a hint on what the polling is returning. Fewer than 1 in 5 Albertans are confident right now that the changes to the auto insurance regime are going to translate into lower premiums. In other words, about 80% of Albertans feel like their auto insurance premiums are about to go up again, along with everything else. These are the issues that people are talking about around their kitchen tables. These are the issues that are creating stress for people. So we want to know how you're navigating them. You can leave a comment on our YouTube episode. You can respond to any of our social media posts. Make sure you give us a follow at Real Talk RJ. And of course, our inbox is always open. It's nice and easy to meet us, to find us at ryanjespersen.com. Just click on the connect link. You know, we talk a lot about the conversations in our live chat, powered by Park Power, your friendly local utilities provider, providing electricity, internet, and natural gas across the province of Alberta at the lowest possible rates. And if you check out their website, parkpower.ca/realtalk, you can learn more about exclusive opportunities for real talkers. Yeah, that's right. If you bundle your internet, electricity, and natural gas with the promo code REALTALK, you could save up to $150 off your first bill. And that's just one of the reasons why we recommend Park Power. I know I mention it every time, but I just want to return to the fact that they support nonprofits in the province. Their profits go to nonprofits. Fantastic stuff. Get started today. Keep more money in your jeans at parkpower.ca/realtalk. Big day today, the Edmonton Chamber of Commerce hosting its annual State of the City. I'm proud to be hosting it at the Edmonton Convention Center. This one's going to look a little bit different, though. I don't have to tell you that Edmonton's Mayor Amarjeet Sohi took leave to pursue federal political aspirations, and that means that instead of hearing from the mayor, attendees at the State of Our City 2025 are going to be hearing from a panel of experts checking in and giving us their take on where Edmonton's at right now. You can learn more about the benefits of membership by checking out edmontonchamber.com, and make sure you give them a follow on Instagram as well. They're doing a great job advocating for small, medium, and large businesses across the Metro Edmonton region. All this talk about business, is it kind of pissing you off a little bit? You've been looking for a job for quite some time, or maybe you're underemployed, or maybe you're just uninspired where you're at. If you're interested in joining Canada's green energy movement, Solar by Kuby would love to hear from you. You can check them out online. That's kuby.ca, kuby.ca. Click on solar, and then that's where you'll find the careers link. They've got amazing job opportunities available right now in Alberta and British Columbia, including some remote opportunities in Kelowna. You could be headquartered out of Kamloops, Lethbridge, Calgary, Edmonton, you name it. They're looking for engineers, installers, salespeople. They're looking for journey persons. They're looking for apprentices. It's Canada's fastest growing solar installer, and they're leveling up this spring. You can check out again the careers link at kuby.ca. Well, I know that our next guests are so excited to talk politics. They've been waiting in the green room, and but by the way, welcome to the show, everybody. We want to say hello. Scott Portingale joining us in studio, the director of Emergence, an animated short film and a finalist for the Edmonton Film Prize. Darrin Hagen, the director of Pride versus Prejudice, the Delwyn Vreen story, also a nominee for that big prize. And Lowell Dean, the director of Dark Match, is joining us via Zoom this morning. We're going to be talking about Northwest Film Fest and celebrating the art of filmmaking, and in particular Canadian filmmaking. But what kind of a talk show host would I be if I didn't ask you if you have any thoughts about what you just heard from Alberta's Premier while you were sipping your coffees 30 feet away?
Well, we weren't listening too closely because I will be watching it when I get home. But it's interesting to be sitting in a chair that Danielle Smith just sat in.
Yeah.
I don't smell sulfur.
Oh, jeez. Do you have a bone to pick? Do you have an axe to grind with the government?
Well, I just did a film about the potential use of the notwithstanding clause to take rights away from Canadian citizens. So some of the stuff that's going on in the world right now is of concern to people in my community, that's for sure, in the LGBTQ community. So bone to pick, I think that's a little oversimplistic. I was going to comment, though, on how much energy you have this morning, and I wish I could get a shot of whatever you have at 7 o'clock in the morning to make you this rambunctious.
Yeah. Well, I always say to people, I don't do cocaine. That's always the first question. Although Johnny and I will crush coffees for sure. The Delwyn Vreen story is one, and I'm quite certain that you and I spoke years ago, and this was something that you were either conceptualizing or already working on. But talk to us about Delwyn Vreen and why this story was so important for you to tell.
Well, 26 years ago, Delwyn Vreen was working at the King's College as an IT instructor, if I'm not mistaken, and was fired for being gay, and went to try to take his case to the Alberta Human Rights Commission so that he could get some sort of redress, and was told by the Alberta Human Rights Commission that they had been directed by the Alberta government that they were not to inspect or investigate anything to do with sexual orientation discrimination. So his only option was to take the Alberta government to court to defend his human rights. And he won, and the Alberta government actually appealed that decision, which is why the Alberta government had to be dragged all the way to the Supreme Court. And Delwyn won again, forcing the Alberta government of the time, the Klein government of the time, to read in sexual orientation into the list of protected qualities in terms of the human rights legislation under the Charter.
We on this show, we always meet people that were drawn into advocacy, or that were like pulled into politics or public service because something resonated with them or something impacted them. My understanding of Delwyn Vreen, who I do not know personally, is that he never really wanted to be an activist. Like, he didn't want to be famous.
No, he didn't want to be famous. He and you know, you think about what makes a hero in modern society. It's sometimes it's people that fight back. Sometimes it's people that just allow their cause to be used, their name and their story to be used as a cause to move human rights forward. And that's what Delwyn did. He never had to take the stand. The case wasn't actually about him. It was about the Alberta government not protecting his rights. And so when Delwyn Vreen in 1998, the decision was handed down by the Supreme Court, and in fact, the queer community won, or the Delwyn won. Basically, the Alberta government was compelled to read in sexual orientation. And for a while, we weren't sure that they were going to, because the Ralph Klein government was getting a lot of advice to invoke the notwithstanding clause to completely override the charter rights of queer Albertans.
How much did you learn about politics?
Well, you can tell I'm a little well versed, and I had to learn a lot about constitutional law.
I'm impressed, man. I've known you for 15 years. I've never heard you talk about constitutional law.
This is his first film, and he's actually the winner. He won last night.
We were going to keep that.
Oh, really?
Yeah, we were going to keep that until
you introduced him as the nominee.
Well, because all three of you are nominees, and I wanted, congratulations, by the way.
Thank you. I'm kind of blown away.
I mean, people will know you, for your work, obviously artistic, a queer historian, artistic director of Guys in Disguise. You've created more than 40 plays, but your first foray, like Scott said, into filmmaking was it? Like, would you describe it? Do you roll your eyes when I call it a passion project? Was this something where you said this has to be done?
Well, it was presented to me. I was invited along. I wouldn't call myself a filmmaker. I'm an artist who lucked out and was able to make a film.
But you're the director.
Yeah, I am. But so I guess I'm a filmmaker now. But I wasn't when they called me up. and so for me, I mean, it was what I love talking about queer history. I love bringing the story of the queer Albertans to the front so that we can learn more about our province and its history. And so for me, it was just a matter of I basically said to Andrew Paul when he offered me the gig, or asked me if I was interested, I said, I've never directed a documentary before. He went, yeah, I know. But I did have a lot of experience in taking queer stories in a lot of detail, like some judicial stories and whatnot, and putting them on the stage. So this was just kind of an extension of that. But yeah, it was a big learning curve.
Scott, it's good to have you. You're making your Real Talk debut this morning, by the way.
Yeah,
it's nice to have
you.
you joining us in studio. Well, congratulations on Emergence. I'll give this audience just a sense. You're a director and a cinematographer, and a decorated one at that. Probably best known for experimental natural history time-lapse cinematography. Is that fair said? Stop motion animation and cosmic practical effects work. Emergence is absolutely fascinating, and it's just kind of like bite-sized insight into this phenomenal form of creativity. Talk to us about the project.
Yeah, it's online now, actually, on my website, and it's a short 5-minute film, stop motion, and it's silent, no dialogue, so it's all done through the action of one character on a planet. And the film tells a story of the emergence of consciousness, and there's two stories being told at the same time. There's a scientific story and humans' encounter with the logos, with the concept of God at the same time. And it kind of weaves in between the two, and there's a lot of double entendres. I'm trying to be as broad as possible, because I don't want to tell people what it's about or what the metaphors are about, because there's a lot of them that they can extrapolate and bring into their own experience.
Do you so Darrin does this a feature length doc, or somebody does this sort of thing, and then you do this like stop motion. It's a 5-minute film, but obviously I would imagine I know nothing about filmmaking. Probably takes the same amount of time to do both. I have no idea. But is your film a reflection of kind of how your brain works?
Yeah, my process is pretty fragmented. There's moments of a lot of productivity, and there's a lot of moments of hands in your face, and I had to move a few times. The place that I was renting, had to move out. They were selling it, and then moved into Fava, but they weren't ready, so I was in an edit suite. So I was just really flexible, making things work. There was some effects I had to wait for a while before I was able to do, just with time. I'm a father of a young child, so
congratulations.
Thanks a lot. There was a lot to juggle during those times, and it was sort of shot in a piecemeal kind of way. If you were to condense it down, maybe somewhere between 8 months to a year's worth of work. And a lot of that work really isn't the animating. A lot of people think that, stop motion animation is this, you're just sitting there animating for a real long time. A lot of it's the planning and the moving and the set building, especially when you're on your own and you're not in a studio environment where there's lots of people and that synergy, which would be amazing, but it's just sometimes not a reality for filmmakers like myself.
Huh. Let's welcome Lowell Dean into the conversation. Lowell is a Canadian filmmaker with a talent for the twisted. I love that. Lowell, a lot of folks will know you for writing and directing the horror comedy Wolf Cop and the sequel Another Wolf Cop, which quickly achieved cult status following theatrical release across Canada and the United States. But you were nominated for an Edmonton Film Prize for your project Dark Match. This is a super fun film. Take us into it.
Sure, yeah, thanks for having me. Dark Match is kind of a ridiculous, I wouldn't really call it a horror maybe, it's more of a thriller, but it's about accepting an offer that's too good to be true. It's about this group of wrestlers circa 1980 something, and they're on the road. They think they're going to have a classic conventional match in a small town, but it turns into something a little more sinister when they realize that there is the person behind these matches may have a bone to pick with them at the organization. And it features wrestlers like Chris Jericho and a bunch of wonderful Canadian actors.
Did you grow up like a huge wrestling fan?
Actually, that's the weird thing about this movie for me is I didn't. I was a little bit into it, but it came to me later in life. I actually was dragged to a wrestling event in where I'm from, Saskatchewan, and high impact wrestling for anyone who knows that. And I didn't really want to go, but by the end of the evening, I was hoarse from shouting, and I'd fallen in love with the theatrics of it and the sport, and I would say the art of performance. So I think wrestling is a really fun, engaging sport, and I also think it was really ripe fodder for a horror movie set on the prairies.
Yeah, is that so? I love and I appreciate Scott taking the question of like asking how your brain works or how your creative process works. Is that how you are as a filmmaker too? A real life experience resonates with you, and you immediately go, "I know I could do something with this on the big screen."
Yeah, I think that's super fair. I would say I find hearing the stories of these other two gentlemen with you very inspiring. It seems like their films are really stunning, so I'm excited to see them. And for me, yeah, I mean, I don't really think about how it happens. I do think there must just be some kind of initial spark, and for me, it's not like having an idea. It's not being left alone by an idea. There'll be something that gnaws at you, and sometimes I wish I could abandon an idea, but ones like this keep knocking on my brain.
You're nodding your head, Darrin.
Oh, that's just such a beautiful way of putting it. It's not like we generate this stuff. It's more like stuff finds us, and sometimes it won't let its hooks out of us, and you fight it, and ultimately an opportunity opens up in front of you, and that's the idea that's on your shoulder, and you take it through the door, and it's literally just this. People think that there's a lot of planning involved in a career. I think there's a lot of random luck and chance, and just stepping through doors without having a clue what's going to happen next.
Has that been your experience too?
Yeah, you have to be adaptable and flexible, and when you resist that, it often works against you.
How so?
Stubbornness really can work against an artist. Like, I had a film that I worked on for a while, and I got development funding and then just didn't get that green light, but I stubbornly persisted and had a few smaller grants and did it in a piecemeal way and really just rode it into the ground in a big ball of fire. Just
in a big ball of fire.
Beautiful description.
Yeah,
I love that.
But I learned a lot during that process, and just how to execute, how to plan, how to be disciplined, and yeah, it was it's my university basically.
Huh. Yeah, that's a cool way to put it.
Yeah.
We've been talking to this audience for the past couple of weeks about the return of Northwest Film Fest, Canada's longest running nonfiction film festival, by the way, and it does kick off today, and it runs for the next week or so. By the way, I'll let our Real Talk patrons know. You can check your email. You have an exclusive opportunity to claim 2 passes to go check out any film of your choice. So to our Real Talk Patreon supporters, check that out. You have a 24-hour head start, and then we're opening it up to our Real Talk YouTube channel members. So keep an eye on the Real Talk community chat on Discord for details on that. But on Monday, May 12th, the 3 of you it's going to be a back-to-back screening, which is super cool.
It's a cage match.
It's a basic nice play on words. People can check out northwestfest.ca for more on that, and they'll have a chance to check out all of the films that we're talking about here today. It's a celebration in a way. I mean, this is obviously the Edmonton Film Prize, but Northwest Fest also an opportunity to take a look at what international filmmakers are doing, but Canadian creators as well. And I always value the opportunity to check in with filmmakers like yourselves, Lowell, to get a sense really of what the artistic landscape looks like right now. How difficult, or maybe is it getting easier to make films in Canada, to get them funded, to get them distributed? I mean, what's the reality for an aspiring or even an accomplished filmmaker in Canada right now?
That's a really good question. I mean, I feel like the goalposts are always moving, unfortunately. And I have lamented, I've made 6 films now, and the thing that I keep coming back to is there's no formula, like I wish I knew that the way I did the last film suddenly migrated into the next. But like, for example, why am I here talking to you guys about Edmonton? I was fortunate enough to meet a company called Department 9 in Edmonton that was looking to produce features. So that was a marriage was formed there. But I've had other films produced through the telefilm model. I've begged, borrowed, and stealed to get a film made on like online competitions. So I don't know if it's getting harder, but I do think the pro of right now is there's a lot more ways to digest and take in projects. Like, for example, we have all these streaming services. There is still limited theatrical. There are ways to get things in front of eyeballs. However, making money and having a long-standing career, that's something that I personally feel is always just on the cusp of what's attainable. And I mean, again, like I said, I've made 6 films, and I'm still like, what am I doing next year? So it's a fickle industry, but I mean, it's not. It's an industry driven by passion and storytelling, and I wouldn't abandon it for the world.
Scott, when you put together a project like Emergence, obviously there's huge value in something like Northwest Film Fest. You get a chance to get it in front of an audience, get it on people's radar. But from a distribution standpoint, or to get it out in the mainstream, if that's even what you're endeavoring to do, like, can you take us through the process and how that works and what that reality is like?
It's changed quite a bit in the years that I've been making films. To get things online, to cut through the noise, to cut through the vertical treadmill video, it's tough. And not really to sound cynical, it's just the reality of it is to grab someone's attention. And it probably affects how people write things. And it didn't affect how I wrote. I paced it. It's got 20th century pacing, and it's hard to get a film out there on the internet where people will stay engaged, because most people are engaging the internet on their phone.
Yeah.
Yeah. So film festivals, they kind of took a back seat about 10 years ago, because short filmmakers were getting a lot of traction online if you had something that was worth watching. But now it's kind of inverse. Now the film festivals, I went to SIF, they had 500 people there for the Alberta, I forget what they call it, the Alberta program. And, they have a lot of support for that program. And it was great to screen the film in front of 500 people and engage them after. And to get that online is really difficult to do.
There's films are made. Well, I guess now you just kind of said they're not, or they haven't always been, but it feels like they're made for the big screen. Like it seems to me like everybody talks about like these big epic films, or even just the documentaries where you want that kind of a more of an intimate vibe. Do you make something like you envision where the audience is going to be and what the reality will be for them?
I make it for the big screen, but the phone is actually quite disappointing, not just from a visual standpoint, but from a sound standpoint. You're missing so much of those sonic details that make a film. Like you could consume a film just by listening to it and get more from it than the visuals. Well, I guess it depends on the filmmaker, but to do it on a phone, and it's a really difficult thing to do, you know.
What do you hope people take from watching Pride versus Prejudice? Like, what do you hope that the audience experiences throughout it?
Well, and I think that's the important thing is when we talk about, you know, big screen versus small screen, what's really important is people experiencing something together as a group. And I think that's something I've been able to watch Pride versus Prejudice in a few different cities now, in a few different contexts. And to hear the laughs happen at the same time, to hear the shock of disbelief as one of the judges turns his back on the people that are prosecuting a case, an overreach like that, hearing sniffles as they respond to the emotional parts of the story, that's something that you can't really transmit to an online experience at all.
Laughter means something.
Laughter is huge. And as a comedian who worked in theater for so many years, like, oh my God, laughter and applause and hearing the audience live, that's important. And I think what's also interesting is I just got back from Europe, where we were invited to be part of the 16th Poland LGBT Festival. And Poland right now is in a very tenuous place as far as queer rights goes. They've got a big election coming up. Everything's riding on it. Whether or not they have any kind of equality in the future depends on kind of who gets elected next. And to watch this film about the battle for human rights against a government land in a place like Poland with subtitles, and to still hear the laughs at the same place and the sniffles of tears at the same place and the shocks of disbelief at the same place, that kind of takes you out of like big screen versus small screen. It's more about people versus not people. You know, you have people in a room experiencing something together is a very special thing.
Lowell, you've been nodding the whole time that Darrin's been talking.
Yeah, I mean, I'll echo that exactly. It's not necessarily about the size of the screen, though it doesn't hurt. It's about the communal experience. It's about riding the wave of emotion. And there's something beautiful when you're in a packed room and you're feeding off the energy of others, you know, whether it is, for my movie, for example, laughter or fear or tension or seeing something really weird or horrific. It's one thing when it's just you, but when you feel the people on the left and the right of you kind of reacting or building to something, nothing is more exciting. It's like a drug.
So did you, on Pride versus Prejudice, did you have to find a balance between activism and entertainment?
Yeah, well, I learned a lot about pacing and about letting a documentary breathe. I knew what the story was in a lot of detail, and I put it down in as much detail as I could. So everybody in film and media knows there's this thing called B-roll. And as someone who gets interviewed by the media a lot for queer history stories or my own career, I just hate B-roll. It's like when they go, okay, can you pretend, now that we're done interviewing you, can you pretend to walk down the street and walk in the door? It's like, no, I'm not your prop.
The
Stop.
laziest B-roll of all time is man typing at desk.
Typing at desk. I know. And when they ask me that, it's like, are you going to send over a maid to clean up? Like, I'm sorry, do you really need, footage of me chain smoking with like piles of ashtrays around my computer and accordions everywhere? Nobody needs that. So anyway, it's one of those things I hate. And it's an easy fallback for a lot of filmmakers. I'm not criticizing people who do this way better than I do. I just wanted to sort of put it out there. As a subject of B-roll, it makes me crazy. So one of the first things I said was like, I hate B-roll. I hate traditional B-roll. Let's do something different. And I had been involved with the Edmonton Queer History Project doing queer history bus tours. And I knew that Michael Fair, who was also one of the characters his story was in the documentary, he was doing queer history walking tours. And I thought, well, we're doing queer history. Let's use that as our conduit. And so we filmed a special queer history bus tour where I actually created a tour to the places that were mentioned in the film with Delwyn Vreen and Doug Stollery on the bus talking about the different experiences that they'd had in some of those places. and then we filmed Michael Fair leading people through the queer history of downtown Edmonton through this sort of the warehouse district. And so those became our B-roll threads that came through. And I think it was really interesting because, this story has its own drama, it has its own climax, it has its own laughs and punchlines and stuff like that. But sometimes you just need to sort of step away from the story and let the audience breathe for a second. And these moments of the bus touring through downtown Edmonton with buildings going by and watching Delwyn relive some of those experiences and places was kind of the perfect. And Sheena Rossiter, who was the editor I worked with on this film, I learned so much from her. I'd go, okay, next is, she goes, no, it needs to breathe. And she would just put a beautiful scene in and we would just watch it. And that's where the music can sort of buy you a little moment of changing the channel that way.
Yeah, powerful stuff. You referenced Doug Stollery, former Chancellor of the University of Alberta. So I mentioned I was hosting this Chancellor's Forum last night.
Was he there last night?
He wasn't. Well, I didn't see him.
Okay.
He wasn't there as far as I know. But it was interesting in this room. And the U of A chancellors through the years have hosted these forums for meaningful conversations. I've hosted them on homelessness, on the opioid epidemic, on misinformation. I mean, just fascinating stuff and really deep and meaningful conversations. The point I'm making is being in a live room, in a live audience, regardless of what it is, the medium or the conversation or the method of delivery, audience reaction is so huge. And there were moments last night where a panelist would make a point that would elicit either a oof or applause or a or something, and it just goes such a long way, I think, not just for the commentator, but for everybody that's participating in that panel to know that it's resonating with the audience. I thought it was so interesting to hear you guys talking about laughter and what it does, to witness an audience taking in your expression or taking in your art form. How important is that for a filmmaker, at least at some point, to be able to connect with audience in like visceral ways?
Yeah, you need validation along the way, even if it's sparse, just to connect those dots and move forward. That's what I would say. I don't know what your experience is.
Well, I'm a theater artist before I was a film any kind of filmmaker. So for me, definitely the impact of a live audience on any kind of performance is just massive. People don't sit and laugh alone much when they're watching television by themselves, but in a group you could be watching that same thing and the other laughter will inspire you to join into the laughter. It's a communal experience.
And a lot of my work has been experimental, so there's zero laughter. The Emergence is a narrative piece. So
but not everything's about laughter,
There's a punchline at the end, and there's a build-up towards it. But other films I've made have been strictly experimental, and there's zero laughter, and I'm okay with that. It would be weird if people started laughing.
You can hear the pin drop,
if they laughed,
right?
it would be pretty bad. If they
pretty offensive, actually. What are you laughing at?
We keep talking about laughing and sniffling, but the other response is dead silence when you know that they're actually so in it that no one's clearing their throat, no one's shuffling in their seat, and you could hear a pin drop because they're all focused on that moment on the screen. That in any kind of art form, that's the moment you're waiting for, is when they're just completely connected to the material.
Lowell, what's something that you think that non-professionals, outsiders, what's one thing that you wish outsiders...
We call them muggles.
Muggles? What's something you wish that muggles like me better understood, or maybe a misconception that you see about the Canadian film scene or making films in Canada?
That's a great question. I think people assume it's like a lot of maybe pretentious people in their bubbles just creating things that they want to make for themselves. I think that's absolutely not true, as evidenced by the filmmakers you have on this panel. People make things to connect, and they make things for an audience, and they make things to educate and entertain. And also, this is, believe it or not, an industry. I've been fortunate enough to make films where it's not like, I've done the smaller ones where it's a handful of people, and I've been on big productions where it's putting hundreds of people to work. So this is an ecosystem, and I think it's a vibrant, important ecosystem for our country now more than ever.
How does it, for those of you, like I'm just checking out imdb.com where you have the trailer for Dark Match, if people want to watch it, how has like the advent of, just these massive players now in streaming with, like obviously Prime and Netflix and Apple Plus and like just everything. I don't need to name them all. How has that changed the game, if at all, for you? Is it more distribution opportunity now? Is it more challenging, more cutthroat now? What's the goods?
It's all of those. It's definitely cutthroat, but I think if you make the right product and put your heart and soul into what you're creating, it will find an audience. And I think the cool thing about right now is you bring up Dark Match. Dark Match is a horror film to many people, so it is the kind of film that maybe not everyone will be interested in seeking out. But we now have streaming services like Shudder, which caters exclusively to horror. So if you're kind of bent when you're looking to watch things is often weird or spooky or bizarre, or want to watch some Italian slasher films, you can go right to Shudder, and they're going to have a huge library of films just for people like you. So yeah, you have your Amazons and your Tubies and Apple TV, and I had another film, Dialogue, that just debuted on Crave in Canada. So I think that's the cool thing, is there's way more places with way different forms of curation. But the downside is, yes, it is cutthroat. And you can make a movie, and 20 years ago, if I would have made a film, I could have said I made this movie, and it'd be like one of 3 that came out that month. And now it's like, oh, it's one of 3 that came out this hour, it feels like sometimes.
Are you in a totally different, like on the business landscape or the distribution landscape, are you on a totally different level with shorts? Like, is it a completely different business?
Yeah, I think it's more about building the body of work that will help leverage future projects. And really, the only thing standing in someone's way to make a film is writing that project. So, for me to go into the feature world, I'd have to write. And I'm not tied to stop motion animation or experimental filmmaking. I actually want to go into longer format, whether that be feature or series. But you got to write it first, and then that's the only step I'm looking at. After that, I'm not even looking at that right now.
What's next for Pride versus Prejudice? Do you have distribution, or what's like if people want to? I mean, obviously Northwest Fest. You can come watch it on Monday the 12th. You can get your tickets at northwestfest.ca. Northwest Film Fest running from the 8th to the 15th of May. More details on the website. But what's next?
Well, with Pride versus Prejudice, we're sort of still riding the festival.
Yeah,
you have sort of an 18-month window, I think, where you can enter it into festivals and get it played. And through that, you hope to garner enough laurels and awards and notifications that someone will pick it up for distribution. I'm going to say it's totally not my department, and I'm glad that it's not my department because I don't want to deal with that stuff.
No, that's kind of a nice luxury to not have to.
Well, I'm the Edmonton Queen.
Do you have someone that you're working with in distribution?
Well, I've got, luckily...
you sound concerned.
Well, I'm just always curious. Yeah.
We have an executive producer and an impact producer, Doug Stollery and Senator Chris Wells, who have been doing a stunning job getting it entered into festivals and into not just festivals, but Pride festivals all over Canada. Yeah. And also there's some stuff coming up with some sort of community foundation initiatives coming up across the country that Andrew Paul is setting up. So it's been very exciting to sort of watch the team. I feel very privileged. I just made the movie and then I walked away and went back to my life. This is the interesting part with theater. The show would be over and we'd be packing up the dresses and going home, right? Well, maybe not dresses for you guys, but I noticed we all wore black today because we got the filmmaker memo. But in film, it's interesting because like the gig's been over since for a year now, and it just keeps happening. It just keeps moving forward, and so I'm grateful that it has that kind of longevity in life. And I'm dying to see it on some sort of major streaming platform or a channel of distribution. I mean, fingers crossed. We'll see what happens. The more awards we get, the more likely it is that it'll happen someday. Right? Yeah.
So good start this week.
Not too bad. Not
at
too shabby.
Northwest Film Fest. You guys okay with him taking top prize, by the way? You seem to have a smile on your face when you said it. We're getting thumbs up from Saskatchewan. We got a thumbs up right on the screen.
Yeah,
hey, Lowell, that is, we'll take your screen again. Could you replicate that? I believe this is the first time in Real Talk history that an animated thumbs up has popped up.
That is so cool. I got to get
virtual support.
Yeah, I think of like that. Remember that guy that appeared in front of the judge remotely, and he was the lawyer, and he was a cat.
Oh yeah,
remember
totally.
He had the
would
filter
be me.
on his.
I love that video.
Oh,
Yeah, we have yet for that to happen on the show. I just thought this was a fun question. It was actually submitted by an audience member. And Lowell, to you first. What is a weird or unexpected influence on your filmmaking that people wouldn't guess?
I would say my family. There are things in there that maybe things we've said to each other, taken completely out of context, put in other characters' mouth that no one else would know, but I'd have a certain family member who'd be watching the movie and they'd nudge me and be like, why did you put that in there? So it's like, it's a fun little secret tribute and dig sometimes to those you love.
How about you?
What was the question again?
What is a weird or unexpected influence on your filmmaking that people wouldn't guess?
I wouldn't say there's a weird one, but I'm pretty influenced by the technical side of things. I'm obsessed with technique, how people do things. But it's not weird, but I guess that would be the thing that motivates me.
I think that's
a large
cool.
part. Yeah.
We've got JJ in our live chat right now. Says I would love to see. I love this. This is what's that kids movie about the emotions? Do you know the one I'm talking? All the characters are emotions.
Oh, yeah.
Johnny, do you know the one I'm talking about? What's it called? Inside Out.
Yeah.
But JJ says I would love to see the lifespan of a feeling in stop motion. Like, what does the lifespan of a joyful emotion look like in stop motion?
That sounds like a Canada
says JJ, by the way, says what a fascinating panel. Thank you for the great information.
I don't know. Being joyful like forever would be torture.
Well, Albertans have found a way to be angry forever. Maybe you could do a film.
Yeah, we need to chill out a little bit.
They take a break every now and then, right?
Yeah.
Unexpected influence that people. I can't wait to hear you answer this.
Oh God! Well, on my filmmaking, I can't really say because I've only ever made one film. But on my artistic output, I would say that people would be probably surprised to find out how much '70s sitcoms and laugh tracks have to do with my formation of what's funny and timing. I used to think I was Jack Tripper from Three's Company when I was in high school.
You kind of, in a small way, kind of.
I even had a couple of the same shirts, and I was quite proud of that at the time.
Yeah.
And believe it or not, even though I love esoteric, avant-garde classical music, I love disco and I love top 40 and I would just the music of that era influences me in a lot of ways. Politics, queer politics, like queer history. I'm just fascinated by the world around me, and I'm amazed that I never run out of stories to tell about what Edmonton's queer community has gone through.
I want to pointed question here.
Pointed.
And don't get pissed off at me for asking.
Oh, here we
it.
go.
No, but I always tell the story. Well, I've told this audience this two sentence story 100 times. One of the biggest influences on my career was an assignment editor, Randy McDonald, at City TV back in the day, and we would sit in a big circle back when they used to do this in newsrooms. If it's going to be a 2-sentence story, it's going to have to be real long sentences. But we would each be responsible for pitching one story idea every day. And I was intimidated because I was young and I was new on the team. And I was the cub reporter, basically. And I would pitch an idea, and Randy would always say, "Why do we care?" And I was offended at first. I was offended initially. Why should we care? Why do you care? It's a great story. Why do you care? And then I realized he was pushing me like a coach to be better. To tell the story in a way that exhibited why people need to care, create interest in the story. Here's my question to you, why should everybody, regardless of sexual orientation, history, geography, personal experience, care about queer history?
You don't understand the history of Edmonton until you understand the important role that queer people have played in that history. We've left a huge and important mark on this city. And if you don't know the queer history of Edmonton, then you don't know Edmonton history.
Beautifully said. That's Darrin Hagen. Darrin is the winner of the Edmonton Film Prize.
New girl on the block, just for the record.
Congratulations. Is it kind of annoying when the new guy wins?
No, you got to get good at losing.
You got to get good at losing.
You got to get good at losing if you want to be a filmmaker, or not getting not winning.
Lowell, were you just the tiniest little bit annoyed that Hagen rolls in on film one and takes it?
No, I think that's great. I think, if everybody gets things at a certain time or place, I think it's boring. So I think it sounds like a really worthy film. And now he's got all the pressure for his follow-up.
Oh, yeah. That's the trick. I have no idea what's next. Maybe I'll just stop now.
Yeah.
Retirement defeated. Right?
Go out on top.
Yeah, exactly.
Isn't that that's the George Costanza? When you deliver that line, you get everybody to laugh, just know when to leave.
It's like
the
Elizabeth
room.
I. Don't name your successor, and then they'll just wait for you to die.
There you go. You can catch all three of these brilliant filmmakers in action. You can watch their work at Northwest Film Fest. You can find all of the details online and see that full schedule at northwestfest.ca. While we've got your attention, Real Talkers, I also just want to let you know what's happening. It is the 8th of May, and this is opening night. This thing's going to run for the next week or so, but you're not going to want to miss kicking off this festival season. Northwest Film Fest blasting the roof off the Gardner with a huge double feature Britpop extravaganza. This is going to be super fun as Blur to the end and Blur live at Wembley Stadium make their highly anticipated Alberta premieres with 4-star reviews across the board. These two incredible films, the next best thing to being on the road with the band. The next best maybe than sitting in the front row for their incredibly live show. But you are going to be able to check that out at Northwest Film Fest. Plus, see the work by these three. Incredible work. Emergence, directed by Scott Portingale. Pride versus Prejudice, the Delwyn Vreen story, directed by Darrin Hagen. And Dark Match, directed by Lowell Dean. The three of them forming our very special edition of the Real Talk Roundtable on today's show. Thanks for doing this, guys. We appreciate
Thanks for the
it.
coffee.
Yeah, thanks for
Hey,
having
guys,
me.
what did you think of that coffee, by the
Not
way?
bad,
We've got a new supplier right now.
We've got a new machine. Who's your supplier?
Well, yeah, we don't pay for it, so
Okay,
that's why I'm asking. What did you go with? Johnny and I were, this is like an embarrassment of riches that you get this push, but there's like
I had an
screens and
Americano.
screens.
Although lately everyone's been calling them Canadiano, even though Canadiano is actually a thing, but they just want to take away the Americanization of the name.
Is there a rivalry with American filmmakers right now? Is that manifesting itself in the creative arts?
I don't think so. No, I don't.
The answer
That's
is
not
no.
That's not a thing. Not even a little bit. I don't.
You're not
think.
looking to pick fights right now. It doesn't sound like.
I was having monthly chats with my friend Christopher Peterson, who lives in Key West, Florida. He's a big female impersonator down there when the political situation started to change. But we haven't touched base in a few months. I've got to check in with him and find out what it's like to be doing what he's doing down there right now.
Female impersonator.
Well, yeah.
Is that drag queen?
Well, yeah.
Do you
Except
not
he does celebrities. He does live.
I see what you're saying.
You've
Okay.
met Christopher. He does live Marilyn Monroe, live Betty Davis, live.
I've
Judy
just never
Garland.
heard someone say female impersonator.
Oh,
before.
I guess it's kind of an archaic phrase.
Well, is it?
now.
I don't know. I'm not the one to ask.
In the 80s, it was a big deal. In the 90s, it was a big deal. Anyway, I distinguish from drag queen as female impersonator because his act is very specific.
Got it.
But he's basically, a drag performer working in Florida, which is one of the hotbeds of conservative homophobia in the States. So and we haven't had a chance to touch base about the worrying changes that have happened since the Trump administration started to sort of switch stuff around down there.
See, you're experiencing what we hope everybody does at some point in the show. Is like, I guarantee you're going to text him at some point today, right?
Probably, yeah.
Check in on him.
Yeah,
See how he's
just
doing.
check in on him, yeah.
Right? Why not?
Exactly.
Check in on your friends. Hey, guys, congratulations on this. All three of these brilliant creators that you've been hearing from, as mentioned, finalists for the Edmonton Film Prize, ultimately acclaimed by Darrin Hagen, director of Pride vs. Prejudice. Again, you can get your tickets for Northwest Film Fest. It kicks off on the 8th of May. That's today. If you're listening to this show, the day we're doing it, you can check out the full lineup and get your tickets. You can get the festival all access passes as well, which is a great opportunity, all on the website. And again, thanks to our Real Talk patrons and our Real Talk YouTube channel members, we're going to be sending you to the movies. We're going to be sending you to Northwest Film Fest. Make sure you stay tuned to the show and check your email inboxes for more details on that. This conversation has been made possible by incredible Real Talk partners like our friends at UCAN Youth Services. You can check them out online at UCAN.ca. This is a nonprofit charitable organization dedicated to helping young people out of harm's way and onto a path of economic independence. I've been spending some time this week making sure that Relentless Outreach program is on your radar. This is the work that they're doing with vulnerable young people aged 12 to 17. Young people that, quite frankly, are spending more time either in police custody or navigating the justice system than they are in school, or than they are with a healthy peer group, or than they are in reliable, supportive housing. You get the idea? UCAN Youth Services outreach workers stop at nothing to reach out to young people, empower them in making positive, healthy, and life-changing decisions. I also want to make sure that their programs for young adults are on your radar, and that includes the Verdo Project. If you know someone 18 to 24 years of age that has just a ton of potential, that would love to have reliable employment, but there's barriers in their way, you got to tell them about the Verdo Project. Verdo is Latin for turnaround or change. This is a 20-week pre-employment program that helps these young people transition out of harm's way and back into school or back into the workforce. They take 12 youth in every intake, and that happens every 8 weeks. It's a Monday to Friday type program. It wraps up with job interviews and hopefully job placements. I was there when one of the UCAN youth grads had a chance to ring that big bell. They had finally secured employment in the entire place. You could feel the support in that room. Really remarkable stuff at UCAN Youth Services. You can consider a donation today or maybe a partnership. If you're an employer hiring young people at entry-level positions, this could be a perfect fit. Again, you can connect with the team at ucan.ca. This is hilarious. Tony's in our live chat. She says, can Johnny play that clip with Blanchette again? The Bloc Québécois. She says, I just want to hear that sweet, sweet French accent. What is
beautiful,
What is it
isn't
with
it?
people
It's
in Alberta?
that bedroom
connecting
twang.
with
They got
Bloc
it. Like, you can't. It's a romantic language. I mean, you can't compare it to any other one in that way. They've got us there. But also, like like I said, when he's talking, I don't know why he's my favorite to watch now. I just find myself watching clips of him on X now because I feel like just the translation with French, it's a lot softer when you're saying it in French, but then when you flip it to English, it just feels so blunt. So like, I don't know if he's shooting from the hip and saying what's on his mind, or if the translation just makes it a little more blunt. But I love his statements. During the debates, I was like, let him talk again. I was just waiting for him to talk again because the way he would phrase things, or maybe it's just the flip of translation, I was just enjoying it so much.
Yeah, no kidding. Live chat's all over the place right now. That's a good thing, not a bad thing. Ytrium says queer history is human history. Isn't that the
100%.
truth?
Yeah.
Tracy says emulating John Ritter is not a bad thing.
100%. We were watching, like, there is a devoted channels now. If you like
for Three's Company,
let's just be like, let's pull back the curtain. You know, I subscribe to TELUS, you do as well as our TV provider, and so there's an actual channel that is, I think it's 2 channels actually back to back if you go to the guide, that is all Three's Company all day long.
What?
We remember I threw it on one day here. We were watching Three's Company.
It was hilarious.
And you told some stories
because I didn't realize they
when
had
you were
swapped
growing
out
up,
characters.
it was a pretty racy show.
Oh yeah, weren't allowed to watch it when I was growing up.
But it is problematic. You watch it now, you're like, this is some of the things, like especially about women that are
everything's
on the show.
problematic
Yeah,
from the 70s and 80s.
I watch the show now and I'm like, wow, this show was pushing some boundaries back then.
Yeah. By the way, 80s Fanify, 2 points for you on the Real Talk scoreboard for helping me out with the name of that film, Inside Out. Have you ever seen that animated film, Inside Out, about emotions?
No, I haven't.
It's actually,
is that something you've seen just because of the kids?
I probably wouldn't have watched it if our 9-year-old hadn't been interested in it. But it's actually really good.
I'll have to check it out.
Yeah, it's always interesting to see how the creative arts can help convey important messages. And I love this note from Shauna, who says, in the context of our panel here, real people doing real things are always worth our time. Mm-hmm. I think that the insight in that comment is very notable. Many of you, of course, continuing this conversation about Alberta's separation, about Alberta's sovereignty, dissecting what you heard from Alberta's Premier Danielle Smith earlier in this episode. Allie wonders, what does a sovereign Alberta mean? I mean, the word sovereignty, right? It's very different. Someone wrote in earlier this week and said, I need to know the difference. Are we talking about sovereign Alberta, or are we talking about separate Alberta? Because those could mean 2 different things. But Allie wonders, sovereignty within a united Canada, or are you still separate? Are you on your own as a sovereign entity? Then how would Canada be united then? Says this whole conversation, this whole thing is so confusing. I know that for a lot of you, this is something that you're like thinking on, and I want to show you, like, we're receiving these emails and like they're like pages and pages and pages.
Yeah,
but that's not a shot. Like I've
never seen emails this long on any
I was
topic.
showing you these ones, and I'm going through with my highlighter, trying to sort of like pull the best parts of what a lot of you have to say, but kind of the points that you're making with these big long ones is that this is not something flippant. This is not something that you're taking lightly. This is something that you're putting a lot of thought into. I talked to somebody last night who said to me that they're leveraging AI. We were talking a lot at this Chancellor's Forum on misinformation. By the way, you can check that out. I'll be tweeting about it later today. It's already on my Instagram story. If you follow me at Ryan Jespersen, the link, if you want to check out that Chancellor's Forum on misinformation, you can watch it for free from start to finish. But there was some talk about artificial intelligence and the role that AI is playing in misinformation. Not just algorithms. But AI itself, photos of like J.D. Vance like dusting Donald Trump's skin with cheesy dust, and but the videos look so real.
Not just the videos though. You can go into ChatGPT if you're a creator of this misinformation and tell it, here's the things I want to portray. Give me 10, give me 10 headlines that'll grab people's attention and get clicks.
Yeah.
Even if it's not real information, and ChatGPT will give you those readily in like 3 seconds, right?
Yeah, for sure. And so this person comes up to me last night and says, AI is not all bad. And no one would argue, I think, that AI is all bad. I think you just want to understand what you're getting into, understand how to recognize misinformation, understand how you can be manipulated. But this person gave me an example. They knew that Premier's going to be on the show today, let me know that they were going to be watching, and they said that they've been been using AI to get insights to kind of cut through the noise. Everyone's got, all of a sudden, everybody on the internet is a constitutional and treaty expert, right? Everybody on the internet now is an expert on this, and they're using AI. I would say never defend yourself in court using nothing but ChatGPT. Probably a bad idea, especially if the stakes are high. But people are using that to seek about the treaty relationships, about what separating from the country would look like, about what some of the things could be at stake.
Sure.
And that would be an example of how AI, I think, is helping people understand the reality and the facts around this conversation.
Yeah, AI is a double-edged sword right now until it becomes I don't know. Will AI fact check itself? Because it gets things wrong sometimes, right?
sure
But I
it does.
also use it to fact check other things. Like, there was an RFK clip on Joe Rogan that has now been AI fact checked, actually, and fact checked by researchers as well, where he makes all these sayings about, 50% of China has diabetes, which obviously that's an insane number. Right off the bat, when he said it on Rogan, I was like, that's horribly wrong. But he brought up some research where they gave kids in school tuna sandwiches to see how long the mercury would deplete from their system, and then they gave them vaccines and saw how long that those substances, including mercury, which now really isn't in a lot of vaccines, would deplete from their systems, and the mercury in the vaccines stayed in longer. And I was like, this is a lot of information. So I went and researched the actual project, but I asked ChatGPT first. ChatGPT kind of got some of the information wrong. Then I went to the actual research, and I was like, first of all, they didn't give him tuna sandwiches. They just gave him mercury and just see how long it would deplete and anything. Anyways, the whole thing was nonsense and misinformation, and it was portrayed right on the biggest podcast in the world. So I think AI has its benefits, but at the same time, it's getting some things wrong. But it does. The thing is scary to me is it gives you stuff fast. So people have a tendency when they're in live situations on podcasts to use AI to fact check. And I think AI needs to be fact checked a little more first. So
yeah, for sure. No, great points. On the political front, on the separation front, Stephen, what an interesting comment, says, what if we canceled Canada tomorrow?
What do you mean?
He says, I'd be open to that. He says, we're just a bunch of mining companies anyway, right? Let's reset and make something real. That from Stephen. Isn't it kind of interesting? Like Canada is a relatively young nation. Like Canada's a very young nation. And all this talk is kind of, I think, it's for some people, and I recognize and I respect that some of you have written in. You've even showed up into the live chat as we've been doing this show, just letting us know that you're signing in to check out. I always see this on online and comment threads. People will say, this isn't the airport. You don't need to announce your departure. But I do recognize that some of you pop into the chat to let us know you're done with this conversation. Yeah. You don't want to entertain talking about Alberta separation. You don't believe it's going to happen. You don't believe it's a real thing. You don't believe that it's worth your time and your energy and your effort. And I get it.
I agree. We gave it a week, though.
I really get it. But I also think that it's something that right now, this movement and the impetus and the shenanigans around Bill 54. Listen, maybe I should take back shenanigans because, like I said, this is an equal opportunity legislative change. To drop the impetus or to drop the requirements for a referendum to 177,000 signatures really does open it up for everybody. But the timing is so obvious what it's all about. But I thought it was interesting to hear from Jason Kenney, who spoke to Don Braid, longtime political columnist. Obviously, Don, I think a respected voice in the province of Alberta. And Don spoke with Alberta's former premier a short time ago. He writes, Jason Kenney constantly battled the feds in court. He challenged the carbon tax. He challenged C-69. He challenged the plastics ban. He challenged the application of the Emergencies Act, and he won as often as he lost. Kenney launched a referendum on reforming equalization that carried, but was ignored by Ottawa despite its constitutional duty to take it seriously. He quotes Kenney, and it says that in this interview, Kenney tells him it is the job. And this is Kenney commenting specifically on what Danielle Smith's United Conservative Party is up to right now. This is the party that Kenney built. This is the party that Kenney brought together, right? The Wildrose and the PCs. Alberta's former premier, the 18th premier of Alberta, says it's the job of the provincial government to defend Alberta's interests in federation. For sure. It's the job of any premier to raise those issues. But says Jason Kenney. When it comes to separation, I think the so-called separatist movement in Alberta has never been a serious enterprise. He says it's always been a fringe movement that I think is counterproductive. And then he went on to talk about the Liberal Prime Minister. Kenney making it clear, as if anybody would have assumed otherwise, but he lets Don Braid and the public know that he voted for the Conservatives, obviously. Voted for Pierre Poilievre, he says. But he went on to say, quote, Mark Carney has said he wants Canada to be an energy superpower. This is like Stephen's comments. Canada, just a bunch of mining companies. He wants Canada to be an energy superpower, a line borrowed from Stephen Harper. He said he wants to get oil and gas to global markets and to advance major projects and to build. Kenney says those things are all music to my ears. That from Kenney. Let's not ignore the obvious that the biggest part of this conversation, or the general theme or the recurring theme of this conversation, comes back to oil and gas. It comes back to resource revenues. It comes back
our culture
to pipelines. It comes back to access, right?
100%.
There's not a lot of talk about anything outside of that when it comes to the better deal that Albertans want with Ottawa. This has been an antagonistic arrangement. This has been a difficult 10 years for that relationship between Justin Trudeau's government and between Conservative government. And for that matter, Rachel Notley's government in Alberta as well. Yeah. Right? The last 10 years under Justin Trudeau were difficult for many Alberta operators. That's a fact. The source of the frustration is obvious to a certain degree. The question is right now, number one, what's exacerbating that? What's fueling or fanning the flames? We asked Premier about that. And number two, what comes of it?
Yeah.
And I think that's the bigger question.
And I think you're right. And I like that you keep bringing it up, because conservatives, people on the right say it's not just about pipelines, but clearly getting a pipeline is at the heart of a lot of these issues and a lot of these conversations about separation. I think we spent a week on it, Ryan. I think it's great that we did it, because, even if, I believe 100% it's never going to happen, we need to do that. Also, like how you commented Canada is young. It was crazy the other day. I was just looking at facts on Canada, because we're talking about separation, confederation. Our flag didn't become official till 1965. That just seems insane to me. That just seems wild.
It was a change in the flag.
But it's just one of those little asterisks that makes you remember, we are a young nation. We're still figuring things out. I will also say that I think North America and the world in general and Canada, we're a little sick here. Maybe we have a little flu. We've been hot and cold. The politics in North America, the States and Canada, look at all the flips that have happened. Before COVID, conservative back to liberal, conservative back to liberal. I'm talking about in the States, but with Biden and Obama, and then back to Trump, and then back to Biden, and then back to Trump. And just now here in Canada, we're seeing that again, rising conservatism and obviously the votes that they got this election. I feel like Canada's a little sick. We've been in a hot shower that went cold and hot again. And I don't know if that's making us, it obviously is making us a little more divisive, but I think we're kind of what is what is Canada right now? We don't really know. Is it conservative? Is it liberal? Is it straight down the middle? I think we don't know. We have a little bit of an identity crisis here, and Trump is exacerbating that. So I think that email's correct in the fact that we don't need to blow up Canada and cancel Canada right now, but we do need to figure out what we are. I
think it's a great point, and I think you're right about a lot of people right now are having, even the conversation between your two ears is what is Canada to you? What does Canada mean to you? You may even boil it down even more and ask, why Canada? Because there are people right now that are living in Alberta that are super frustrated, that feel like Alberta would be better off going it alone, and that are prepared basically to burn the Canadian flag. They're prepared to pull them down. They're prepared to get serious about all of the things that I think that the average person would be skittish about. And those are people, I think, that have made that personal wager within their own minds and hearts that the priorities of Alberta supersede the priorities or the benefits or ultimately the foundation of Canada. And that's what people are asking about. And that's what people are deciding for themselves.
I feel like this is the wrong time for all this. And so I liked that you asked the Premier that directly. This is incredible timing. Can't we get Canada knowing where it's going first before we say, no, we're taking our ball and going home and leaving the country, you know?
Well, I talked to somebody, I mean, you know, we'll see. I mean, you know, the Real Talk rumor mill, you guys know that, you know, take it for what it's worth. But the Real Talk rumor mill has been reporting that the UCP caucus participated in what one source, a reliable source, described as an election readiness meeting.
Oh, really?
And we talked to you about this and the impetus for an election. And I know that some of you feel like we're the UCP, and we have the premier on the record from this morning. We have her on the record saying that she does not plan or would not call an early election in 2026. So we'll see what happens. You know, politicians can always find ways to change course, but she says no, which I find interesting because in this election readiness meeting, there was some acknowledgement. Well, I mean, you know, we dig and dig, right? We're like pigs out here looking for truffles, John. It's what we do. But you recognize that things may be better for the UCP right now than they could be a year from now.
I was just going to say
and that's not necessarily just relating to this RCMP investigation into this alleged AHS procurement scandal. It may not have everything to do with maybe a looming teachers strike or strains on the healthcare system.
It's all of it, right?
I checked today before we spoke. I mean, obviously, I wish I had 45 minutes with the Premier. It's been 2 years and 200 days today since she promised to fix healthcare in 90 days. So that's an interesting point to consider.
It's not fixed.
But here's the number one reason why a Real Talker who approached me yesterday at the University of Alberta and asked to remain anonymous with this observation. This Real Talker believes that the impetus for an early election for the United Conservatives would have nothing to do with anything that I just mentioned and everything to do with the possibility that Mark Carney might actually be successful.
I'm waiting.
And if Mark Carney is successful, then that's a real problem for conservative provincial governments that have made hay and healthy amounts of hay on fighting and battling with the feds. What if Mark Carney gets a pipeline built through Quebec?
I never have to. I just wait till you get to the end, Ryan, because you're leading us there and you got exactly there. Here's the thing. You and I both know now is the perfect time for an election because before our premier was complaining about Trudeau. Now she's complaining about Carney. But every day that passes, Ryan, Carney is, whether you like it or not, on the right or left, he's upticking. Yesterday, his meeting with Trump, whether you thought it was bad or good, it wasn't awful. And that's the only thing that makes Carney get another win. Was it horrible? Did he look like shit? People on the left say it was a win. People on the right, you know, the extremists will say it was horrible. But even, like, I was watching Fox News clips where they were, like, excited about this new relationship with Trump and Carney. And the days that go by, the more wins Carney gets, the less there is for our premier to complain about. And eventually, if those wins lead to a pipeline, I have no idea what she's going to complain about after that. And I said this yesterday. If he sits at a table with her in person and says, hey, I hear your complaints. We want to jig this process a little more so Alberta has more prosperity. Maybe you get a little more piece of the pie that you're welcome to. And you know what? I do think an east-west pipeline or a pipeline in general is a good idea. Let's put it, even though we know, Ryan, those roads to doing that would take, like, what are we talking, a decade?
Well,
like, to build a pipeline across this country? But what I'm saying is if he starts the end, if he opens the gates for it, win for Carney, win for Carney, win for Carney, it gets less likely. Does she want to have an election now or 2.5 years from now when Carney's, you know, done some success, like you said?
Born for Battle in the chat says, Team Canada says, call an election. Alberta Girl says, nothing that the Premier says is set in stone. This is shifting sand. Silk Chauncey. What a name, Silk Chauncey. It reminds me of Chauncey Billups. You remember Chauncey, the great baller?
Sounds like a cocktail.
Silk Chauncey.
Like
that does sound like
I'll have a Silk Chauncey, please.
A Silk Chauncey,
Yeah.
yes. Yeah.
Yeah.
I'll have a mint julep. My pal will have a Silk Chauncey.
Okay, so my favorite drink...
Says she's fanning the flames.
No, keep going. I was just going to say my favorite drink to order. I often ask you to make me
A mint julep.
Yeah, and maybe that's why you brought it up, because it is... and it's an old-timey drink, and it needs to be made perfectly, and so I often ask bartenders.
Have a mint julep,
I'm like, are you ready to get muddling? Do you have a muddler back there? Because I'll have a mint julep.
I want to thank everybody that's been watching our live stream on all of the social media platforms, essentially, not technically, but essentially. This is presented by California Closets. You can watch the show live streaming weekdays at 8:30 Mountain, 10:30 Eastern on X, on Facebook, on Instagram, on TikTok. What did I say? LinkedIn, Mixler, YouTube. We got it all. And every once in a while, a name will jump out. I see John Carson's watching us live this morning on Facebook. Former MLA. John, where were you? Edmonton Meadowlark. And I'm pretty sure Edmonton West Henday. I think that there was and didn't lose an election. Actually did not seek re-election. But it's good to see John in our chat. NDP MLA. He says, Jason Kenney knows all about empowering fringe movements to benefit himself. He used the Wilberforce Project to his advantage, and then he turns around and now he's acting like a moderate. Fair comment. The Wilberforce Project, of course, that anti-abortion or pro-life organization, whichever phrase you prefer to use, and it kind of came back to bite Kenny, didn't it? And you look at the ones that brung ya, and with politicians, oftentimes we talk about politicians serving masters, and who do they serve? Who do they legislate for? You know, when a premier like Danielle Smith says that we're fighting for Albertans, who exactly? Yeah. Right? Are you fighting for oil companies? Are you fighting for oil and gas workers? Are you fighting for 4.5 million people all at the same time? What is it? Yeah. But I tweeted after we had a conversation with Grand Chief Greg Desjardins, Treaty 6 Confederacy of First Nations. He says, basically this cannot happen. There are treaty relationships. This cannot happen. Alberta cannot separate. And so I post that. I say a friendly reminder from the Grand Chief. And all these people are coming at me, including this constitutional lawyer who's made a bit of a name for himself as a rabble-rouser in the province. And he's saying, well, you're just exhibiting how little you know about all this, and says, actually, here is how it's possible. And he lays out the road to a successful separation. And it's true. It is technically possible. And I responded, it is technically possible as well, John, for me to win the U.S. Open Golf Championship. Technically, it is possible. It is highly unlikely. And there's a difference there.
I wish, and I know we're going to talk about this a little less, because I think we've come to the conclusion this week, it is not going to happen. This is a political, it's a tactic that's happening right now.
I think the petition's going to happen, that's for
sure.
The
petition's going to happen, and we're going to see, we're probably going to see some numbers somewhere, whether it's on a ballot question or whatever, where we finally see, okay, 1/3 of Albertans are really upset and would separate and do want a referendum. I don't think that referendum ever happens, and if it does, I don't think Alberta ever separates. But what I will say is, man, this is not doing this country any good right now. And secondly, we could go into every little thing we could talk about, but right off the bat, like the economy, what would the Alberta dollar, the nation of Alberta dollar, be worth after separation?
We just roll.
I would think it would be shit.
No, we just roll with Bitcoin, man. You just roll with Bitcoin.
Dude, never have truer words been spoken. If we were gonna, Alberta, we're separating. Yeah. We're the cool guys now. Definitely we would.
How about this?
Bitcoin.
I mean, here's another great question. Didn't have a chance to get to. I know I keep saying that, but I just want you all to know, I wish these interviews could be 2 hours. Obviously you have a chance to really dig into stuff and pick the brains of our guests. We try to make the interviews as long as humanly possible. But if a separation or an independence referendum failed, and Albertans voted, let's say resoundingly, let's say 70%, let's say 75% for a more cooperative approach with the rest of Canada, what would that ultimately mean for Premier's leadership?
Yeah.
Right? If you, she's trying to walk a line. We talked to this about with her, these parallel narratives. Number one, she says, I'm a proud Canadian and my Canada includes Alberta. And then on the flip side says, but if we receive these 177,000 signatures within 4 months, which we've just made it much easier to do, and our government is required as a result of that to put a separation question, or at least a referendum question, we haven't seen the wording, a referendum question in front of Albertans, we will do that in 2026. Those are two very different things. Mm-hmm. And I know that she is being perceived by many, because you're telling us this, and it's obvious, she's being perceived by many as supporting this initiative to remove Alberta from Canada. And if that is the case, and I'm not talking about the reality of it. I'm talking about the perception of it, right? You talk to politicians all the time. I hate to keep dragging him back, but Randy Boissonnault, one of Randy Boissonnault's biggest issues may not have been, Randy would say to this show and did say on this show that I've been exonerated by the ethics commissioner. Like they looked into it and I've been exonerated. But in the court of public opinion, that was irrelevant. It didn't matter. Perception is reality for politicians, and that's the risk.
Randys.
I think that's here.
Yeah.
Your mama in the chat, by the way, I did want to mention this quickly. Your mama says, Jespo, please amplify the voices of those who don't have one, those that are being pillaged by Premier. And your mama says, I'm talking about the disabled. Just wanted to let you know, 2 days ago, we welcomed to the show Zachary Weeks, just a phenomenal guy, and as well as Michelle Christensen with Barrier Free Alberta, talking about this Canada Disability Benefit being clawed back by the government of Alberta, talked about some of the unique challenges that Albertans with disabilities are facing, and for that matter, Canadians with disabilities as well. You can find that. That's our May 6th episode. That interview follows our exclusive with Grand Chief Desjardins.
An amazing conversation. I will just end the show. I know we're out with saying I would not want to be the Prime Minister right now because I know this separation thing, it's not going to happen. It's a little tactic. Right? It's a Premier's tactic to strong arm a bit because we've got this Prime Minister now that has won, but she wants better for Alberta, and I don't blame her for that. What I do blame her for is the tactic. But now Carney's in a bad position because if he goes and sits with the Premier and gives her a bit of, even a little of what she wants, is that weakness to the rest of Canada? If he doesn't at all, is that he's not willing to work with the individual provinces and he only cares about the East? I don't know what the card Carney's going to play right here is going to be, and whatever he does, how the public's going to respond, but that's the next thing I'm waiting for, is how he's going to deal with Danielle Smith, what he's going to give her or not give her, and how that plays towards the rest of the country and how they feel about him.
Okay, I want to thank, and I'm going to award 5 points on the Real Talk scoreboard. Who was it first to let us know here that there is white smoke, John? There is white smoke. Was it Wobbly Inc. or others? Some of you deserve credit for putting this on our radar as we wrap. A new pope, John, has been chosen. Smoke from the Sistine Chapel chimney comes on day 2 of conclave, which I'm quite certain is relatively quick. And so we will learn more about a new pope, which is obviously not just big news for Catholics. But this from JJ, new pope. Thank God it wasn't orange smoke. I think that's a reference to Donald Trump. That's from JJ. Can you believe that the Trump, I know we haven't spent a lot of time talking about this, but Trump releasing the photo of himself as the Pope? Like, I sometimes still have to, I know don't roll your eyes. Don't roll your eyes. But
we're living in a simulation.
But he
right
posted it.
He
really posted it. And that's the thing for me is I'm like, the president of the United States. Yeah. Like, it's one thing. And listen, I'm a proud Canadian for sure. It was pissing me off, and maybe a lot of you too, when he was talking about, I don't care who the Prime Minister is. I don't care if the Prime Minister is Stephen Harper, Pierre Poilievre, Justin Trudeau, Mark Carney, whomever, Rachel Notley, the next leader of the federal NDP. But being called the governor of Canada by the President of the United States, being referred to as the 51st state, the border being described as an imaginary line, that's one thing. But disrespecting, like, every Catholic on planet Earth.
Well, when I see these things, I think get the phone away from Grandpa. It's what I think. And no disrespect to our audience who are grandfathers and in that age range, but it makes me think like Trump doesn't fully understand AI, and he thinks, "Oh, this is great. This is an amazing artist rendering, even if it is done by a computer of me," and just wants to put it out there. Like it puts me. I love the way I look in this picture, and in his mind puts him in a good light. But man, that is one of the most disrespectful things I've ever seen a president do, period, is to hit send on an image like that. I don't know how Catholics aren't crazy up in arms about this. I know some of them were, but I don't know how every news organization that preaches, Fox News and the right-wing ones that push religion and being in the fabric of America, and it should be in the White House. I don't know how they see this as not the most egregious thing ever to be put out on the internet. It's pretty bad. We're in a simulation right now. This isn't real life.
Ms. Katie wondering, is that a record? Is that record time in choosing a new pope? Quick Google search. The fastest ever was Julius II in 1503 AD, which was elected the same day. They say within 10 hours. And in modern times, Pius VII in 1939 elected in 2 days over 3 ballots.
That's way faster.
So, well, this is right on there, 2 days as well. So we'll see. I'm out of my depth talking about how the Catholic
2
Church
days since the
operates,
last died, or 2 days since they?
No, since
okay.
conclave.
Okay,
Since they were in the room. Wobbly Ink says, not to offend. I always love comments that start with that. Not to offend, says, but it's crazy to me that every new pope can dictate what an entire group should think. It's culty. But to each their own. Hopefully the new pope is progressive. Wobbly Ink touching on something we discussed. Remember we talked to Vicky Mochama about this. We talked to Thomas Lukazik about this after the Pope's passing, talking about how his legacy was one of deemed to be relatively progressive, where like John Paul and popes that came before were seen as
he's a very chill guy,
a little more conservative.
Yeah, very
and
chill.
People are wondering kind of where the Catholic Church will go. Will it kind of return to middle ground? Will it swing more conservative? Will it continue on this progressive path? We'll see.
I want to know the hard-hitting questions, like how does our new pope feel about paper straws?
Yeah,
right out the gates.
Yeah. Terrelyn says the picture of Trump as the Pope was beyond disrespectful.
It's horrible.
And says the Star Wars pick was ridiculous.
I'm not even a religious person. And seeing it, I was like, this, if this was my church, my leader that he's trying to envelop here in this picture, I would be pissed. I would hate this guy.
Yeah. JJ, by the way, says, Jespo, you disagreed with my comment yesterday that Trump is dumb as shit. He says he is. He says, sure, he's smart in marketing, in his ability to persuade morons, but he is dumb as shit. He does dumb things. That's idiocy. JJ, number one, I'll take your point. I did say I don't think he's stupid. I don't think you become president of the United States. I don't think you build a legion of followers that'll risk life in prison to storm the Capitol on your go signal. I don't think that you achieve 70+ million votes, at least 70 million votes, in a general election and become president, achieving the highest office on planet Earth by being stupid. But I will also say, JJ, you achieved a very distinct honor of having your comment included in our 60-second YouTube short, our Instagram reel, and our TikTok post yesterday, JJ.
Pretty much
you were
kicked
a
it off.
celebrity. I mean, you pretty much kicked it off.
Even if we disagree.
Keep the comments coming,
on,
baby.
Yeah.
We appreciate it. And as we wrap, Real Talkers, we do want to remind you that we sincerely do value feedback and your input on this show. You know where to find us. You can catch us on social media, or you can visit our website via the Connect link. Want to let you know we're talking auto insurance tomorrow as part of that broadcast. Also, of course, the flamethrower. If you're pissed off about, well, send us an email. It could be included. That's presented by the DQs of Northwest Edmonton and Sherwood Park. And oh yeah, by the way, at RyanJespersen.com, under the events link, you'll find the Real Talk Golf Classic. That goes Thursday, June 19th in the afternoon at the Ranch Golf and Country Club. We hope to see you there as a golfer, a volunteer, or a sponsor. Let's talk again soon.
Real Talk is hosted by Ryan Jespersen, executive producer Josh Dunford, technical producer John Hicks, general manager Katie Cook-Chivers, account coordinator Lawrence Derlego, human resources Lena Shepard, website design Mike Johnston, voiceover by me, Carrie Skelton. Real Talk's editorial board is Supriya Dwivedi, Ahmed Ali, Brandy Morin, Ann Castleman, Corey Hogan, Harmon Candola, Catherine O'Neill, and Chris Henderson. Member Emerita, Julie Rohr. Real Talk is recorded in Edmonton, Alberta on Treaty 6 territory, the traditional and ancestral territory of the Cree, Dene, Blackfoot, Saulteaux, and Nakota Sioux, home to the Métis settlements and the Métis Nation of Alberta. Real Talk is a relay project. For more, check out RyanJespersen.com.